views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Voices of Women is a talk radio show that gives voice to the personal stories of women. It will inspire women and enlighten men to follow their dreams and create positive changes in their lives. Whether the audience listens to best-selling authors or a layperson like themselves, they'll realize there are others with similar experiences and feelings to their own. This show will give women tools they can use every day, which will empower them to step out of their boxes and create the changes they desire in their life. Kris inspires women to find their voices, speak up, and become leaders of their own life. Everyone has their gifts to share with the world, and it's time for women to work together to bring honor and respect to the feminine voice, which is within all people, men and women. Topics include personal growth, spirituality, creativity, leadership, and divine feminine. Now here's your host, Kris Steinnes.
Well, welcome to Voices of Women. I hope everyone had a fabulous Thanksgiving. I did. I was the most amazing meal that we put together at my house, and I get to have the leftovers today. Yum. So we're continuing on our Woman of Wisdom conference, interviewing some of our fabulous presenters coming to Seattle, February 11th through the 15th. Invite you to join us this year. It's a very unique, intimate, life-changing gathering. It's not the usual conference. It's one where we make connections, and the topics today are fabulous because we're going to talk about neighbors and making connections with people. And so, this is what we do at Women of Wisdom, and people have made lifelong friends and developed organizations grew out of Women of Wisdom. So it's fabulous. So again, we have early bird specials. We have weekend passes, and we've even lowered them for sort of a Thanksgiving holiday gift to everybody. We've even reduced the early bird prices. You can come for as low as $200 or $165 for seniors for Friday through Monday. You can't beat that price. So that's available through December 7th, and we have other specials for individual events through December 31st. So check out the website, thewowconference.org. And register soon for that weekend pass. So we're going to talk about how you can create relationship with your neighbors with Briana Barrett-Squirrel. Briana combines her backgrounds in science, research, and holistic education with spiritual resiliency. And through being a neighbor on purpose, she fosters real integrated community step by step and on the scale of a child's world, which means we can all do it. Since 2008, Squirrel has committed herself to knowing and loving the 200 people who wake up within 100 yards of her pillow every day, helping neighbors to dream together and articulate what local, sustainable, lifelong learning and community might mean for everyone. And she's giving a workshop at the conference on February 13th on the lost art of neighboring. So you want to check that out at the wowconference.org website, and also you can check out her website at neighborsonpurpose.com. So welcome to the show, Briana.
Thanks, Kris. I'm so glad to be here, and so glad to be at the conference. It's such a unique place. When I've been to so many conferences where it's unidirectional communication, I'm super excited to be at this conference.
Yeah, that's great.
It's on the show.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to know what drew you to this whole concept of connecting with your neighbors. And I know we've become so isolated. I know the few around my house, and you walk down the street and I don't even see people because they're inside their homes. I mean, living in Seattle, we sort of, we don't live outside as much out on our porches and things. But what drew you to this work?
I used to not know any of my neighbors, actually, myself, and it was a kind of response to feeling temporary. I'm not even from here. I used to live on the East Coast, but before that in the Netherlands and before that in Canada for a decade each. So I never really knew whether I planned on being anywhere for very long either. And I think that stops a lot of people from investing in relationships around them or potential relationships, because if it's based on neighborhood, it might not be based on having anything else in common. And that's kind of scary to and to make that investment. But for me, what drew me to it was exactly the level of, I wouldn't call it success, but joy that I found in connecting with random strangers and asking myself whether it's really random. You know, believing that synchronicity orchestrates a lot for us. I might have only been bumping into people that I could love easily and telling myself, oh, look at me, I'm spiritual, I love everybody I meet. But how could I really test whether I really was able to love anyone, except if I wasn't selecting that group? So, of course, neighbors are selected based on their income and different, you know, taste for their neighborhood probably, but and there's a lot of privilege involved in you know, an invisible selection factors. But being able to turn to the house next door and have personally judgments on the size of the house and the extraordinariness of someone's lifestyle, it really confronted me with the fact that I don't actually easily live judgment-free, and I should try and see how I could love my neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I read in your introduction, you know, like, 200 people that surround you, you know, within 100 yards, and that's amazing. So how did you set out to do that?
I don't actually know 200. I know that there are 200, and
Okay.
I've probably bumped into all of them, but that's my estimate of how many people live around any one Seattleite.
Okay.
I probably know 50, which is still
Mm-hmm.
a large number, and that's the number of people who were at my wedding, which was a block party. What was your question again?
Oh, just how you set out to make those connections.
Well, I had, in a spiritual meditation once, like years before I moved to this particular neighborhood, I had envisioned, what if the world were already enlightened? What would we still be doing? You know, what would the life be like that we would lead together? We would still get sick. We would still fall and get up again. We would still do life together. What would our conversations be about? And I realized that I would be able to turn to my neighbor and ask them for right relationship. And so really my outreach to neighbors and my putting my heart and my body out there near my home rather than in places where I know I'll get along well with people based on shared interests or other things, has been grounded in this method that I'm going to actually introduce people to in my workshop, which is more complex than just calling it 5 questions. And yet it's very simple when you think about how do you foster right relationship. So it's asking for permission to have a relationship, but not putting all of your hopes and dreams for great neighborhoods and the perfect world into one person. It's basically my putting myself out there in my neighborhood is my way of getting to a place where it's comfortable for people to say yes to having that particular conversation, from where I get really interested in the relationship, when I know not only that they know what I would have the way that I would like to be treated, but I know the way that that neighbor would like to be treated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned block party. Like in Seattle, we have these block parties. So that's one way we get to know the people that's on our block. We get to know a few of them, the people that come. But that's once a year, and then again we kind of forget about that. And it takes a lot of effort to make that. It's almost like you're making a commitment. Like, I'm going to get to know these people and allow them to see me. And part of that, so one of my questions is, like, what holds people back from doing that?
Oh, there are so many things. I can sense just walking up to someone's door. I can sense it's as if there are layers wrapped around each home. The first layer is, like, why am I even doing this? Why am I walking up to their door? Like, is this really important to me? So it's my own barriers, right? And even if I have reasoned through all of the, like, well, in my perfect world, I do have relationships with neighbors. I buy local. I can borrow something instead of hopping in a car to drive and pollute to get it. I can, share things. All of those reasons that you might have to do something don't make you necessarily do it. What, on my way even to someone's door that I'm determined to meet or find out if they're home, I can experience the layer that is like, do they even have people come to this door, or do they use their back door? You know, that insecurity as to whether you're even approaching them from the right angle. The layer that is like, do they have a dog? Is it going to bark? Am I going to alarm everyone in the house? The layer behind that, another step closer, is, you know, there are so many layers. Like, am I bothering them at the wrong time of day? Do they want neighborhood? Do they want neighbors in their life? There are so many reasons that no one would ever probably tell you that they're not into it. And I've managed to pay attention to those layers as I step through them and hold them all in mind as questions, so that when I arrive at the door, if someone does open, I don't then push through and assume that they do want all the things I do, but ask them genuinely, hi, I'm your neighbor from, and I'll point physically so they can know I'm not very far. I'm not saying I'm a neighbor when I'm really like on the other side of what's called a neighborhood, but it's really like a giant area with the same name, but it's not their street. I'll point, I'll ask them, are you, how long have you lived here, and are you interested in? I'll just ask all the questions that occurred to me on the way up to the step. But that takes a lot of practice and vulnerability, willingness to be vulnerable, and willingness to be rejected.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think that's what stops a lot of us from any dating, any relationship at all.
yeah, that fear of being rejected, and how is someone going to take it? And even when the doorbell rings and you're not expecting someone, I'll look through the people and go, okay, who is this? And there's some security in that, and then there's that we even have this sort of suspicion, like, why are they coming to my door? Who is this? And we're so on guard. I mean, I remember one time walking to my car. I was in a hurry and I was in a rush and I wasn't thinking. And a guy walked across the street straight at me at an angle, and I kind of froze. Like, it put a little fear in me. And he was just a new neighbor inviting people to his house for a potluck to get to know the neighbors. But it so threw me because that's not expected to, especially a man walking up towards a woman very quickly, very direct. Crossing the street right towards you. It totally threw my off. So I had to apologize for my reaction. Well, this is Kris Steinnes. You're listening to Voices of Women, and we'll come right back, take a break, and talk more with Briana Barrett-Squirrel.
Kris Steinnes is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
What does it mean to be healthy? For each of us, it means something a little different. Discover the art of herbal medicine, a natural way to help our bodies respond better to the modern-day stress and toxicity of our everyday lives. Using organic herbs from around the world, the skilled herbalists at Urban Wellness in Kirkland can help you choose the herbs that are right for your body. Find your herbal solutions for common health issues at urbanwellness.com. That's HERBAN wellness.com.
Sky Siegel co-hosts one of today's most popular psychic shows, Angels and Answers, with Artie Hoffman, as she communicates healing messages from the spirit world. These messages can be astounding, enlightening, and life-changing. Born with the God-given talent of inner guidance and the amazing ability to heal, Sky has healed thousands of people. Schedule a reading with Sky now. Call 908-500-1474 and visit skyofangels.com.
Enlightening, humorous, and compassionate. Listen live to The Kelly Ballard Show. Insight and inspiration from the great beyond. Kelly is a fourth-generation medium and intuitive who covers topics ranging from grief, spirit guides, and listening to your intuition. Kelly can help you get answers and guidance from the other side with a little bit of humor and a lot of healing. Tune in to The Kelly Ballard Show, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Time here on transformationtalkradio.com.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I'm talking with Briana Barrett-Squirrel. So, Briana, I think I noticed somewhere that is Squirrel your nickname?
No, it's my husband's last name. He's really Jacob Squirrel.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So we've been talking about, building these relationships with our neighbors and getting to know them, walking up to a door and introducing ourselves, which is so unique in our culture now. And I'm curious how you find, because you've lived in Canada, lived in Netherlands, if you've found any difference here in the U.S. than from those other countries.
Well, I mean, I've heard that in Italy, the sense of community and walkability is very high because people spend their time after dinner walking about. And such cultural traditions would be wonderful to be able to instill in America, but I just don't think that that's a goal that's realistic for an individual. I've set more myself up for neighborliness as a spiritual practice, and neighboring, which is a word that I did derive from the Dutch buurt. The buurt is the neighborhood, and buurten is making neighborhood into a verb. So I guess the translation would be neighboring, which is just spending time near your house, bumping into neighbors, or actually visiting inside, or I guess having them over. If they're neighbors, I guess that counts. But for me, neighboring was definitely inspired by my homesickness for some aspect of Dutch culture. The Dutch have this tradition on birthdays. They don't even say happy birthday to someone on their birthday. They say congratulations. And as a child, I would be visiting people because that's the tradition. You just show up at their doorstep for coffee and pastry. And they are the servant that day. They serve everyone they know, and it's their pleasure because everyone they know, this was before Facebook, if you knew someone well enough to know that it's their birthday, you would come to their house and you would go around first shaking their hand, then the family's hand, and then everyone who was there. And oftentimes there were just neighbors that weren't necessarily close friends that they had tons in common with, but neighbors would come. But the tradition of being of service to the people who you have in your life threw me, because in Canada, I had grown up where your birthday was the day people surprised you, or failed to, I guess, and gave you gifts and spoiled you. But I liked the idea of being congratulated, and I never found out. No one can tell you why they congratulate you on your birthday in Holland. But I thought to myself, it might be on surviving yourself, but it might also be on thriving in community and gathering this juicy crowd of people. It's like the Women of Wisdom conference, but in everyone's living room all the time. And every week you know someone whose birthday it is, and there's overlap between these circles. So there are conversations that are just kind of ongoing, depending on who stands up and leaves, because there's never enough chairs, and where you end up sitting. You could continue that conversation with even the same person or someone who knows them well and pass along greetings, etc. So very much inspired by that tradition, I would love to see my neighborhood be one where visiting becomes not something that I do one-on-one so much anymore, but where 1-on-3, 1-on-5, people start having each other over. Mm-hmm. And it's a normal thing to do frequently.
Yeah. And when I grew up in Seattle, and we were connected by the children in the neighborhood, because the kids go visit other people's homes. So then the parents got to know each other because they got to know, these kids that you're playing with. And so there was a bigger sense of community, neighbors back then, because we knew everybody on our block. You knew the kids, you knew the parents, and that fostered that. So, and you even talked about borrowing something. When I grew up, if you're cooking something and you didn't have enough sugar, you went to your neighbor and got a cup of sugar. And you had to return a cup of sugar, and we do not do that now. We run down to the store.
Yeah, there's a pride and an independence that's become a trademark of North American attitude, which is it's a tragic response, I think, to the awareness that we do depend on each other. I think the more we realize that we depend on each other, the more self-conscious we can become about it. And one response to that self-consciousness is the illusion of independence. The illusion that paying someone for something, or paying a gas company for the ability to fly to the store and back, basically, is somehow more of an accomplishment than the ability to ask a neighbor and be trusted that the relationship is resilient to that debt, that social debt. I feel pretty strongly, and my husband has coined this term for me, that community is based on need. And so the ability to admit that we have needs and that we need each other is actually a gift that many people aren't able to see that way or willing to give, because it makes us feel vulnerable. I'm using that word often as a positive word, because the ability to be vulnerable is the ability to give someone else the opportunity to shine and say, wow, you too? Me too. And it brings us back to what we have, all that we have in common.
Yeah, that's true. And I was thinking, we feel vulnerable. If we have something, we need something, and to go to a neighbor who don't know us very well, probably, until you build that relationship, it's showing, like, I think this is thought of, that's making me look weak. Oh, I don't have things. I don't have things that make me sustainable. I have to go ask for help. And instead of looking at in this other way that you're bringing about as a way of connecting.
Opportunity.
An opportunity, because people love to give back when you ask them. If somebody asks me, it makes you feel good.
I mean, and if someone is really determined to build neighborhood, they might actually tell themselves, oh, I need to go just pretend I need to borrow a cup of sugar at all my neighbor's house, and then suddenly it's feigned and it's not a gift, right? So actually having a need, actually having it arise naturally, is this beautiful synchronistic opportunity that, it's possible that you might knock on the neighbor's door and they might not be home, and you'll have to knock on another door and another to find that cup of sugar. And so, it might save you time to go to the store. It might save you embarrassment or frustration.
Yeah.
But most of all, it's just saving yourself the frustration that you might not already have the neighborhood that you need to take the time to build. It's confrontational to find that out.
I just have this thought of this could be a very a fun test to do, just, to go to your neighbors and say, I was just baking this cake and I got to have it done by a certain time, and if I could borrow a cup of sugar, and just to see people's reaction, because I think people would, I don't know if, at my age, when, like I said, when I grew up, we did that, but people don't do that anymore. So it'd be interesting to see the reaction and a chance to get to know some of your neighbors. It could be an interesting test. Not that it's the right way to do it, but.
No, I think it's you're guaranteed that people will respond positively. They will either tell you that they wish they had sugar or give you sugar, pretty much. And that's my experience. People are very eager to share. Yeah. And they're very eager to be connected with.
Yeah. So something that
So your test would be the test of whether you would be willing to go to neighbors. And I think the test would fail if it were a fake. But if you actually resolve to find a need once a week that you could actually meet through neighbors instead of through driving, and dare yourself to ask at least one neighbor for help, that would be a cultivation of that resiliency inside ourselves, of the ability to be rejected, quote unquote, which is not personal, actually. The ability to take that time and the prioritizing of this relationship.
Yes. Well, I have a question, and because the full title of your workshop is Women's Work, the Art of Neighboring. And so my question is, why do you consider it women's work?
No, I don't. I actually put that in quotation marks, and later I thought maybe I should have put a question mark, because it used to be what is now been called women's work, which was work that only the women could do because the men were the breadwinners and the women were the social glue. And, the art of neighboring has, in a way, been lost because women's emancipation has benefited and done so much good, but also no one has valued enough what was being done to step in and say, we need to pay people to do this, or we need to still be doing this. Let's step up to the plate and do this. It's as if it was invisible.
Yeah, and
and
you're right.
Is what it's also sometimes called.
Well, and more women are at work now. Though a lot of women work at home too now. But you're right. And people, our mothers were at home. They were homemakers and taking care of the kids in the house, and so they were at home. So they did visit with the neighbor.
And they were networkers.
Yeah.
And they were networkers. I'll interject that it was half business oriented. I mean, a lot of the neighbors were also clients or customers of the husband's business or employer's business. And so having neighbors or other people over for dinner was actually a business meeting also, oftentimes. And it was all more local because it wasn't all nuestro thin spread.
Well, the other thing I'm curious about, because sometimes in order to do this and put yourself out there is like showing leadership. Like if you want to start something in your blog, and there's sometimes resistance about that. Like you want other people to stick their neck out, and other people to organize it. Like great idea, but how about somebody else doing it? So what do you say? How can we cultivate that sense of ownership that everyone?
This is my favorite question, and I've loved your questions. This is a beautiful question. I consider leadership, and there are papers about this. I'll quote. I'll name the title of one. It's called Making Common Sense, and the subtitle is Leadership as Meaning Making in a Community of Practice. And the paper, the small book that it is just an explanation of that title because it's so succinct. But what I will say practically in a neighborhood, I have been asked to, if you want to get together neighbors, you should organize a disaster prep party. Or if you want to organize neighbors, you should throw a block party. Well, I wrote a manual on how to throw a block party in such a way that you are not the leader. Because it's very important to not become a leader. That is the opposite of community fostering. If you would like neighbors to become the citizens we would all like to be surrounded by, if you would like neighbors to become the friends you would like to have, you can't be the initiator of everything. You may actually be the initiator in a sense, but I have resolved to be a joiner. So that's why what I do with neighbors is ask them what they would like neighborhood to be. And if they have an idea that resonates with me, which is almost always the case, I will be able to give them the credit for having come up with it because I only ask them for their wishes and dreams. And then I can ask them whether they would like any support. So they are the point person, and I am their support person. And, of course, because I'm meeting so many more neighbors, I can be an invitation infrastructure. But I can honestly say to a neighbor who I'm talking to about this, there's a neighbor who wants to do, non-religious caroling. Would you like to come? Would you like to practice? Would you like to just be at the practice if you don't sing?
Yeah, and we're running out of time.
I can honestly say it's not my thing.
Yeah, Briana, we're running out of time, but those are great ideas too, and it's about co-leading. So everyone, check out her workshop, The Lost Art of Neighboring. It's Saturday, February 13th at the wowconference.org. Okay, well, we're going to come back after the break, and I'm going to introduce you to another presenter, Barb Ryan.
You got attitude? Keys to the rescue. Adjust your attitude with Keys Clear Protein Waters. So refreshing. Just a few sips of Keys will give you a whole new outlook, thanks to 22 grams of the happiest protein on earth. Tongue-tingling tasty without the guilt of naughty or nasty ingredients. If that doesn't put a smile on your face, maybe you need to drink too. Put a little woohoo in your attitude with Keys Protein Water. On Amazon or at Keys, Kees, please.com.
The doctor is in. Tune in to the hit show, The Psychic Love Doctor, with host Deborah Lee. Deborah's life-affirming, highly perceptive reading method has taught Deborah how to zero in on specific problems with relationships, career pursuits, and current roadblocks to success and happiness. Join Deborah Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific, and for a special broadcast the second Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com.
Are you ready for a game changer? Sarah Westall is bringing you Business Game Changers Radio. Sarah brings you leading experts, visionaries, and newsmakers who provide the best commentary on big issues and cutting-edge innovations. Sarah's 20 years as a business executive will help you think like an entrepreneur with expertise, energy, and attitude. Tune in to Business Game Changers Mondays at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com.
Kris Steinnes is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. I'm Kris Steinnes, and I'm going to introduce you now to Barb Briana, who is also a presenter at the Woman Wisdom Conference. She's also known as the Goddess of Happiness. She's been teaching women to spiral toward joy in a way that empowers them to make changes in their lives, build supportive community, and step into their passion. Barb has been a counselor for 25 years, and 5 years ago she discovered that her purpose in life was to teach happiness classes and workshops. So she is a happiness life coach, an energy healer, and shamanic practitioner. And her philosophy is that connecting with one's core of happiness is personally beneficial as well as community-focused in creating an energy shift for the whole planet. So I love how this relates to my previous guest. We were talking about, neighborhoods, creating community in your neighborhoods. So I just love the synchronicity of those things. And Barb is giving a workshop, Empowerment and Joy, on Sunday afternoon, February 14th. Her website is www.spiralingtowardjoy.org. So welcome, Barb.
Welcome.
So tell us how you shifted your life to going from, I'm not sure what you were doing before, but going from where you were before to being a happiness coach.
Yes. As you had said in my intro, that I was a counselor for 20 years, and I noticed that as I was counseling with people, that we were often focused on what was wrong and what in the past had contributed to what was wrong. And as we looked at healing, it was often from that perspective. And when I shifted to being a happiness coach, more of the positive psychology, it began the assumption that with the assumption that nothing was wrong, that everything that came up from the past came up to be healed if it came up in this moment, and that all feelings were okay, and that we could learn to shift our feelings to a place that felt more aligned instead of stuck.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when you're talking, it makes me think like some people might think, well, you can't be happy all the time, and that
right.
Pollyanna kind of happiness, and I understand from the perspective of as a counselor, that's not where you're coming from, but there is
right.
that sort of doubt, like how could anybody be so happy?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the reason that my business is called Spiraling Toward Joy is that growth happens in a spiral. We just keep spiraling upward by choice instead of the traps where we end up spiraling downward into depression or hopelessness or something. So it's becoming aware of the way that we think and how it influences the way that we feel and where we feel that in our body, and being able to shift sort of the direction that we're spiraling. So it's not that joy is a goal or happiness is a goal and we get there and we stay there, but simply that we learn how to shift it to a place that feels more aligned and feels better than we did in the last moment.
Yeah, and it makes I remember a few years ago myself realizing in some healing work that I did that it's a choice. It's a choice to feel happy, and I can consciously make that choice.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not even feeling happy, but just feeling a higher vibration than we felt moments before. One example that I want to give of that is that when somebody's feeling very despondent, hopeless, depressed, especially around the holidays, those kinds of things happen, sometimes the next higher feeling vibration is actually one of anger. It gets us up off the couch. It gets us motivated. It gets us going. It brings a purpose. And then we shift from the anger to a higher vibration. But that place of anger isn't a bad thing. What if the purpose of anger is to motivate us out of hopelessness toward joy, towards something else that we want?
Yeah,
so
I like that sense of, our feelings being motivators, because even not just angry, but if we're frustrated or we're sad or we're hurt,
yes.
we usually we sit with that, and you think about it, and the process of going through those feelings to you're going to get on the other side of that eventually. because you usually just get that stuck place, like, I'm tired of this, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. So what I do in my workshops and classes and staff trainings and all of those is teach people happiness tools on how they can individually shift how they're thinking, to shift how they're feeling emotionally, and noticing what they feel in their body and how that shifts. And I can give an example of a happiness tool if you'd like at this time.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Okay. So I'd ask everybody in the audience to participate as much as they want to in this moment. And it helps if you close your eyes. And we're going to shift the worry to another feeling. So there's often worries at this time of year that get exaggerated, you know. And so pick anything. Everybody pick something that you're worried about and think, I'm worried that, and you fill in the blank. And you notice where in your body you hold that particular worry, whether it's health or finances or something about your relatives or the world. Notice where you hold that worry. And now shift the word worry to I wonder. And say, I wonder how that will be resolved. I wonder who may come along with a better idea. I wonder who I can talk to about this. I wonder if that's something I need to be thinking about in this moment. I wonder. And you just keep wondering until you feel a little shift of relief in your body wherever you were feeling the stuckness before. And you notice that your mind expands with wonder. With worry, we feel like it's a life and death matter. And with wonder, you feel like there may be another possibility here. That's one example of shifting our thinking, shifting our words, noticing our feelings, and noticing a subtle shift in our body.
Now, you've tapped into something there, because sometimes we're out of our bodies. You know, we sort of just jump out of it because we don't want to feel. But if you pay attention, there's a place in our body we hold the energy or the block, and it could be in our heart, it could be in our gut. And I've had experiences where people touch, you know, I remember doing an exercise where people were touching you in a certain spot, and it would bring up a memory, or it brought up a feeling, and to just and to be there with that, you know, my arm hurts, my shoulder and arm hurt, and what is it trying to tell me? You know, to ask those curious, that's that same wonder question, like, what's my body trying to tell me? Because those feelings and the, you know, oftentimes it takes you back to an earlier memory. You know, it's triggering something from a childhood. You know, that anger, like, why am I reacting? Why am I so angry? That wonder of like, oh, it reminds me of when I was 6 and my father yelled at me, or whatever it is.
And that's when I say that all of these things come up to be healed from the past in that moment, in the moment that they're remembered, or in the moment that they seem to have something to do with our stuckness in the present. Then it's useful to remember it and clear it along with everything else. But going and digging for memories and past experiences isn't as useful or as helpful. And sometimes it's simply shifting the worry to a wonder that can change. And the way that it helps communities or neighbors or friends is that if you called me and we were friends and you called me with a problem, I'd say, Kris, could I help you wonder about that? After I heard your feelings, for sure, and you felt heard, we would go into wondering instead of trying to fix it and worrying more and problem solving, but just simply wondering about all the possibilities.
No, fixing it isn't, sometimes people want to reach out and fix it for you, and that's not, you're wanting a listening ear, you know, you're wanting to be witnessed.
And some people call to have someone to complain with, and they don't want to fix, but if you help them just to wonder about it, they move into a different place.
Oh, yeah. So we've had the friends who, you know, we're going to talk about this again, you know, and it gets a little tiring. Your friends don't want to listen to you anymore because it's the same old problem. So that's a good way to maybe approach that. Like, hey, let's just talk about what this, you know, and bring your friend to a new place with it by those wondering questions. That's an interesting exercise to do.
And very gentle.
Yes. Well, the other thing, too, is, and we'll come back to this because I know we're going to break soon, so is around our stories, you know, and to change our stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because they limit us, and we kind of get into that victim thing of saying the same story over and over again, or telling it from the place of being a victim versus you use the word, I think, restoring, and I like to use the word, like, we're reframing it from a and thinking of it in a new way. And again, it's using that wonder question, but it's telling our stories from shifting them to a new perspective. And I would love for you to go into that a little bit more when we come back from our break.
Yes.
Which we're going to do right now. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk more with Briana.
Are you feeling broken from your relationships? Are you second-guessing yourself about friends, family, and lovers? Tune in to the hit show that's creating a buzz in the love-seeking community, Love Seeker Radio, finding love for your authentic self with renowned love coach Heather Lynn. Tired of dissatisfying relationships? Kiss them goodbye and power up your love seeker energy. Coach Heather Lynn reminds you that you can just be you, the beautiful and perfect you. Visit heatherlynncoaching.com to learn more.
A word of caution: if you prefer the status quo and you are not interested in improving every aspect of your life, this book will trigger the shift out of you. The Truth is Funny, Shift Happens is available now. Author Colette Steffen brings the powerful knowledge and life-changing energy and empowerment from the radio airwaves to the pages of her new book. To get your copy in paperback or ebook, visit thetruthisfunny.com today.
Artie Hoffman is the hottest psychic with the warmest heart and the host of the hit show Angels and Answers. A renowned psychic, medium, spiritual life coach, and an entertaining motivational speaker, Artie has helped over 15,000 people with his amazing intuitive gifts, his passion, and his humor. Call 877-ANGEL-02 to schedule a personal reading or to have your own psychic Artie party. That's 877-ANGEL-02. And visit artiehoffman.com and Angels and Answers on Facebook.
Kris Steinnes is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
Holistic Medical Center is where you find it all. A healthy space with doctors who care, see, and listen to the whole you. Hi, this is Dr. Darvish. If you have not found an answer to your chronic symptoms, you will find answers here at Holistic Medical Center. Our doctors find the root cause of your symptoms and guide your body towards healing naturally. We transform lives from within. Visit drdarvish.com or call 425-451-0404.
How would you like increased health and vitality? How would you like to avoid the onset of disease as well as slow the aging process? This is all possible through a simple, safe, and natural process. Every day, we are either moving toward wellness or away from wellness.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. I'd like to be your partner in achieving optimal health. Contact me now at maryjanemack.com or call 425-392-0659. Visit maryjanemack.com.
Welcome back to Voices of Women. So we've been talking with Briana about happiness and joy. Before we go on, Barb, let's have you give your website and how people can find out more about the work you do.
Okay, my website is spiralingtowardjoy.org, and the way to remember that it's a .org is that it is a nonprofit. And my email is barb@spiralingtowardjoy.org.
Great. So I want to continue on with what we were talking about of the restoring, retelling, changing our perspectives and our stories, and I'd love for you to share more about that.
Yes. And one way that I look at that, when you use the word victim before, that people often tell their story as a victim, and people want to hear that story and want to step in as rescuers. And what is more empowering is, what if there were no victims? What if there were no enemies? What if It was a place of moving to a place of empowerment, that we didn't stay in the stuckness of those words. Because in the victim, rescuer, perpetrator, it is set up such that all of us keep revolving around all three of those. We feel like we've hurt somebody, we want to make it better, and the cycle just continues. And if we shift into a whole new paradigm where there are no enemies, and it's not fear-based, that paradigm is very fear-based, and instead it was something love-based, and it was not about competition but about collaboration with people, the whole story shifts. Every one of our stories shift. And I do a group exercise when I'm working with families or groups or communities or staff, where somebody begins to tell their story, and the next person takes the last line there and adds something to it that they feel in that moment, not trying to create a particular story. And it's almost like when I was younger, you'd be at a party or writing, and somebody would write a line, and somebody else would write the next line of a poem, and you'd fold it over and write the next line. Well, this is the way that we learn to do this in groups. We keep folding it over and putting in the next line and saying something that spirals it up, that spirals the story to a different place, that spirals the feeling to a different place. And when we're done with this and we read through what has happened, it becomes a brand new story for everybody, very experiential, very in the moment, and out of the trap of victimhood and rescuer and perpetrator to a place of empowerment and being seen and heard through our thriving and through our empowerment and through our building self-confidence and coming from a place of belongingness in the world, in this community, and that we are not different from those we are sitting with, that we all have a common story and can retell it into a story of empowerment.
Yeah, I like that. And the thing, I imagine the first person who starts the story, the shift, the ahas, like to see it from other people's eyes, when you've seen it through your eyes your whole life, and to see it from different eyes, and everybody's adding to the story. And like say the whole group probably has ahas with it, because we can all relate to other people's stories. But that seeing things with new eyes, and that's that whole thing of like if we are stuck in our problems, or feeling the victim, is to just, I think the best thing you do is just talk to one person you feel safe with, and just whether you have to blurt it out or what, to get it out and just say something. It relieves you that the shame and the guilt and that stuck feeling gets released, and you go, oh, I can talk about this, because a lot of times we think we can't talk about it, that no one, we're going to look, we're just going to feel so vulnerable, and people are going to judge us, and all those things that we make up in our head, that people aren't going to accept us if we share these feelings we have. There's so much guilt and shame around that.
Mm-hmm. And when I started my work 25 years ago, I was working mostly with trauma survivors and victims of domestic violence and sexual violence, and now that all gets shifted. People's stories are really important, especially because the silence is it's taboo to speak our truth. But once the truth is spoken and heard, and then we have the ability to hear other people in a shifting sort of way, not judgmental, there's no good or bad about it, but it simply shifts, and we all begin to feel that shift over time, and yet honoring our piece of the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honoring our feelings, too.
Yes, totally. Starting with honoring the feelings. That you honor every one of the feelings. They're not bad. And then instead of being stuck in those feelings, the whole group is able to lift you up. And not to where you immediately feel happy. As I said, that's not the goal. But that you feel acceptance and belongingness, all the opposites of shame and guilt. That you feel that sense of oneness, of how so many of our stories are similar. And you feel the empowerment to be able to make change, and that's why this is part of a social movement also.
Mm-hmm. Well, something you brought up a lot in when you were discussing this restoring was empowerment related to joy.
Yes.
So how does that work? You know, I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but how do we get that sense of empowerment in getting to that place of joy?
Yes, well, it's very empowering when we realize, even when I did the I Wonder exercise, and when someone does that exercise and they know that no matter what they're feeling, that they have the power within themselves to shift it even a tiny, tiny bit. For the first time, sometimes they have felt the empowerment of being able to shift how they're thinking, how they're feeling, how their body is feeling, and that is one of the steps to empowerment. And then with the story sharing with some of the other happiness tools, every one of them gives the person speaking, the person working on it individually, even if there's 300 people in a room that are doing the work, individually, you feel the empowerment. You feel moving away from fear-based thinking to a communal, loving-based thinking. You feel the moving away from the shameful feelings to moving toward community feelings. All of that is part of the empowerment that happens in spiraling toward joy.
Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking that, like, it's a tough time for us to feel joy when there's so much going on in the world, and yet it's important that we hold up. It just occurred to me, like, the importance of joy is like the importance of hope. To have hope that we can and will live in a world that has joy and happiness, and everyone has a right to have that in their life.
Yes, and peace, you know. And the two, peace and love and joy, all pretty much go together. And there's many places of peace in the world that we don't pay attention to, you know. And you asked me one question earlier that I'll answer quickly. When we were on break, you asked me sort of about moving toward the study of happiness. And it used to be that all the studies were on depressed people, and there were hardly any studies of happiness, just like we study conflict so much and not what brings peace. And so in the same way as we study what brings peace, what brings love, what brings joy, it's all the same work.
Yeah, that is. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Barb.
Thank you. Thank you.
I look forward to having you at the conference. And Barb is going to give a workshop, Empowerment and Joy, on Sunday afternoon, February 14th. And Briana, who we talked to earlier, The Lost Art of Neighboring, her workshop is February 13th. And her website, I don't think I gave it, is neighborsonpurpose.com. So you can find out all this information of these events on our website, www.thewowconference.org. On the registration page, you'll see we have the early bird weekend packages that are available to December 7th. And we have another special, like you can purchase 2 3-hour workshops, such as Barb's and Briana's, and receive 1 3-hour workshop for free. And that's just an amazing offer through December 31st. So we look forward to seeing you in Seattle, February 11th through the 15th. Again, go to www.thewowconference.org. And also you can check out my book. It's an Amazon bestseller, an award-winning book. It's all about women of wisdom and the stories and art and poetry from participants and from presenters. It's called Women of Wisdom, Empowering the Dreams and Spirit of Women. It makes a great holiday gift. You have a friend who's in need of some inspiration in their life or wanting to learn and explore about the divine feminine. This is the book to get. And if you purchase on our website, it supports Women of Wisdom. That's our foundation website, womenofwisdom.org. Okay, well, we're wrapped up our show now, and we're going to everybody have a great, safe weekend and this holiday weekend and safe travels, and we'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to Voices of Women with Kris Steinnes. Tune in each Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Voices of Women Today, radio with Kris Steinnes.